Welcome back. I'm Connie Sokol, your host of Call to Create, and today we are so excited to have our fabulous guest, Clint Pulver. Clint, thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, it's my honor. Thanks for inviting me.
I'm so excited. We are ready for a rock and rollin', literally, episode today because this man, if you don't know, he does drums, he does aviation, he does undercover millennial, he does it all. So we're going to hear from a speaker's perspective how to do that, share your message as a speaker. And no matter what your industry, no matter what your creative aspect is, getting those tips and tools of how to share your message effectively. So let me give you the official bio and then we're going to jump right in. Clint is known as a leading authority of employee retention, and he helps organizations retain, engage, and inspire their team members from the front desk to the boardroom. And he helps audiences navigate generational complexities, communication challenges, leadership missteps, and culture cues. As the president and founder of the Center for Retention, Clint has transformed how corporations like Keller Williams, AT&T, and Hewlett-Packard create lasting loyalty through the research and the work as the undercover millennial. Clint strongly believes that a single moment in time can change a person's life. He has traveled the world speaking to a wide spectrum of diverse audiences, challenging them to dream, excel, connect, and believe, both in themselves and in the power of others. His mantra, it's not about being the best in the world, it's about being the best for the world. And I will just say on a personal note, and this, I'm not going to embarrass him too much, but we go way back just as friends and touch pointing in the speaking world and different things. And I had a conference that I was doing for a group of women called You Got This Women. It was an interfaith conference, and it was the first one that had ever been done in Utah County. And it was a big deal, but we did not have the money, and it was nonprofit, and we were shoestring budget. And it was, I mean, by the seat of our pants. And we ended up having an incredibly successful day. 600 women came, but I remember inviting you and your band, and we could not pay you what we wanted to pay you. And you were so gracious to come and do that and perform that for that very pivotal day for us. And then I also remember that you made sure that your band was taken care of first. And that always struck me, just what you're doing now and how it's come full circle. I think, oh, he's been living this for years. So let's jump right in. You and I both know the power of mentors in being successful and how vital that is. And you had a really powerful one early on. Do you want to take us back to that, of kind of that pivotal moment in your life, and just kind of share what that was for you?
Sure. I was the kid that always in school had a hard time sitting still, and I would just constantly move, would constantly tap, and everybody obviously was annoyed by that. They saw the issue, they saw this problem, and it happened again and again until one day I had a teacher, and his name was Mr. Jensen, and he told me to stay after class, and I thought I was gonna literally get kicked out of school. I thought I was in trouble, and he pulled me to the side and he said, "Listen," he goes, you tap a lot. You're always moving." And he said, "But I've watched you though." And he said, It's crazy. He'll take a pen and you start writing with your right hand and then you tap with your left hand. And then in the middle of the assignment, you switch the pen and you start writing with your left hand and then you tap with your right hand." And he said, "Listen, I think you're ambidextrous." I had no idea what that meant. And he said, "Can you tap your head and rub your belly?" He's like, "I just want to know." And so I gave it a go. I could do it. And he said, "Okay, now can you switch it?" I was just able to do it. I had this independence over how my brain worked and how I could move my hands and my fingers. It was something innate to who I was. And he smiled and he leaned forward and he said, "I don't think you're a problem. I just think you're a drummer." And he reached back in his desk and he opened up his top drawer and he reached inside and he took out my very first pair of drumsticks and put them in my hands and changed my life in a moment. I love moments. I think if you look at your life and really what makes it a great story, it's the moments, right? We don't remember days in our lives, we remember the moments. And that was a moment that shaped me, that allowed me to see my potential, allowed me to see my worth in a way that I eventually saw it within myself. And I've now been a drummer for, 25, 26 plus years. And I've traveled and toured and recorded all over the world with amazing artists. And I've had amazing experiences. My whole college education was paid for because of music scholarships. And it all comes down to these little moments that over time, little by little, those moments add up to be a lot. And I'll never forget the Mr. Jensen in my life.
I love that he was so observant. and that he saw it through that lens of possibility rather than judgment and annoyance. And I love that he saw that you had those things and saw that you were trading your hands. That is the mark of a fabulous, amazing mentor who is observant. But I see that in you also as I was reading through things and reading your book and preparing for this. I see that thread, Clint, of you observant, and you see something and you see it through your lens. And then how can you use that? How can you connect it and apply it and then share it in a different way? And that's the same thing with aviation. I saw this, it's almost like you get soaked into a world. Maybe obsession is a word, but I don't know, but soaked into this world. Talk to us about the aviation aspect, because that was another big piece of yours that is building to this story of where you are now. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So before drumming, before speaking, before being an author, all of these things that have taken place in my life, my first love, honestly, as a child was aviation. There was something about helicopters specifically that I just thought was so magical. From the sound of the blades biting into the air, the ability to just hover and to just go anywhere. It's the ultimate magic carpet ride. And I remember one of the best days of my life. I went on my very first helicopter ride and I got my first drum set all in that same day. It was like one of the greatest days of my life. And I told myself, I yelled it to the sky. I said, I am going to be a helicopter pilot. There was just nothing that I wanted to do more. And I went and served a mission in Boise, Idaho, far and exotic. It was wild. It was awesome. I got home from my mission and I had to go renew my driver's license. I was 21 and I went into the DMV and I couldn't pass the vision test. And that was a really, I think there's really great moments in our lives, and then there's hard moments, right? We remember the good ones, and we also can remember the really difficult ones. And that was a really pivotal moment because all of a sudden, I'm sitting there trying to read these letters, and she's like, "Can you read?" And I'm like, "Yes, I can read." She goes, "You got to be able to read this for me to let you go." Because I drove there that day. And she looked at me and she said, "You're not driving back." And now I'm under house arrest at the DMV. I had to call my mom. And my mom's so confused. I'm like, I didn't pass the vision test. Long story short, I ended up at the Moran Eye Center at the University of Utah with one of the top leading authorities in a rare and degenerative eye disease known as keratoconus. And as a young 21-year-old kid, my eyes were as bad as an 87-year-old's. And keratoconus, it's a progressive degenerative disease. And so it slowly, over time, just thins your corneas to the point where you go blind. And so the way I thought I saw was the way I thought you see. And there's no other way to correlate that with what is right or what is not. And so, in all keratoconus patients, we know if we just squint our eyes, if you squint, if you move closer, we can put things in and out of focus. And so, anyways, I remember in that cold white room with that doctor, him looking at me and saying, "You will be blind by the age of 31." And then he asked, and then he asked a question that every young person gets asked many times in their lives. What do you want to do? What's your plan? What do you want to do when you grow up? And I had tears in my eyes, Connie, and I looked at him. I said, I want to fly. I said, nobody wants to fly more than me. And he said, listen, young man, I think you're amazing, and I would love for that to be a possibility for you, but it's just not going to happen. He said, you will have corneal transplants. Hopefully those don't fail. The failure rate at the time for corneal transplants was massively huge. And then the repercussions and the complications of that long term. I mean, we're talking your eyes, eyesight. And so in a moment, the sky fell in all around me. I ended up doing a whole bunch of other things. I went to college. I got a career in the medical field. I worked in the OR as an orthopedic specialist. I was absolutely miserable. Quit that, started a speaking career, wrote a book, now travel all over the world playing the drums and speaking. And I learned that sometimes really good things in your life fall apart so that better things can fit together. And I believe in the grand tapestry and the orchestration of God, and that he is the greatest orchestrator in this world. And at times we might not see the tapestry, we might not see what's happening, but man, through faithfulness and through faith, he will always write the greatest story. And I'll never forget 5 years post college, I got a phone call from an eye center in California saying that they had just started human trials for a new procedure called cross linking for people with my eye disease. And I remember I started crying on the phone and they said, do you want to be a part of this study? And I'm like, yes, yes. Because year after year, my eyes were just getting worse and worse and worse. And anyways, I was number 48 and they did the procedure on my right eye. And then 6 months later, they did the procedure on my left eye. And it 100% stopped the progression of the disease. And the
Wow.
crazy thing, though, Connie, is a year ago, I went in for routine eye exam. I have to go in every year, 6 months to a year. I have to just continually go in because my eyes still continue to change in shape. The disease is not progressing, but I still have the disease. And I'm sitting there and I'm, you know, is one better than two? Is three better than four? They're checking my prescription. And the doctor's looking at my charts. He's looking at my records. He goes, I see you're a pilot. And I said, well, you used to be. And he said, why are you not in scleral lenses? And I said, what are you talking about? He goes, they're brand new lenses that are absolutely changing the game for people with your eye disease. And I said, listen, doc, with all due respect, I have been through probably 100 to 150 different eye lens fittings with different lenses, different prescriptions, and different doctors telling me, we'll try this or we'll try that. And I said, it's kind of a love hate relationship. There's a lot of like, somewhat sadness in this story. And I said, I'm good. I don't really need to go down that path again. And he put his chart down. He looked at me and he goes, no, no. He said, you don't understand. And he started explaining the lens and the technology and the fluid in the lens in the surface area that it covers. He goes, please, I'm begging you, please let me try. And at that point, I said, what do I have to lose? And I said, sure. And we went through 4.5 months of fit after fit after fit. And I will never forget in that room a year ago, this time, he pulls up the screen. Is one better than two? Is two better than three? Is three better than four? And then he said, read the line. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking through and I read out loud CKGELFWZYN. And I said, what line is that? And he got a little choked up. And all of a sudden I started getting choked up. And he goes, you just hit the 2020 line. I just started crying. And the first thing that hit my mind again was, you can fly.
Mm.
You can fly. And 2 weeks after that, I went and was able to get an appointment with an FAA flight medical examiner. And I, for the first time in over 18 years, was able to obtain my first class medical certificate to be able to fly. And 2 weeks after that, I bought my first helicopter. And we have jumped back into aviation full time. I'm flying almost every day now. And we started a new YouTube series called Finding Hill. And it has been one of the most adventurous, exhilarating, and exciting things I have ever had the opportunity to be a part of. And again, that beautiful reminder that sometimes in our lives, good things fall apart so that better things can fit together.
Mm.
And what I am doing now and what I've been able to do and what through truly the Spirit and through God and listening to Him and His will, putting that first, listening to that, it has created the ultimate ability to write the best story. And I'm so grateful.
Oh my gosh. And I love all of the highs, the lows, and in between of that. I remember a friend saying to me once, God loves a good story. And he'll give you a snapshot or a glimpse, an inkling at the beginning. But then instead of it being A plus B equals C, it's a quadratic equation. And not to lose faith in that ultimate result, that ending thing that it can be simply because it's different than what you thought. We were just interviewing Brandon Mull, and he was talking about he knew that first book, he got that download, divine download from Heavenly Father. This book will be published, but it wasn't his first book that ended up being published. It was much later. But then with all the in-betweens, it debuted #1 on New York Times bestselling list. So just what you're saying is that for those that are listening, that it can be this shoots and ladders game feel of being a speaker or a musician or whatever it might be, but not to lose faith in those things that those divine downloads that you've been given, and hold faith to those because it may just be a winding road to get there. Now, in order to get there too, I love that along the way, you've had these pivotal people in your life. And even in the speaking world, I want to kind of go into that realm for those that are wanting to be speakers and try, how do I do this? You have had some great speaking mentors as well. You've been able to have great colleagues, Jason Hewlett, Chad Hymas, Ty Bennett, these amazing people. And I know that you've both learned a lot back and forth, but is there something that comes to mind that they've taught you or that you've learned from them that's really stuck with you?
I think it's the power and the privilege of the platform and the influence that you can have. I sometimes have wondered through my career, am I really making a difference on stage for that 1 hour? And I'll never forget, this was back when I used to speak to kids a lot. I still speak to kids because I love it. And man, if you can speak in a horrible gym set up around 2,000 high school students for 40 minutes, you can speak to anybody. Um,
Amen.
I love the kids. I credit any goodness or success that I've had as a speaker or my craftsmanship on stage. I always turn it back to the kids because they taught me how to speak really well. And one of the moments I'll never forget is I had just gone to a high school in North Dakota, gave a keynote. It was so fun, such a great audience. At the end, we did like a little meet and greet. The kids are coming up, hanging out. We're talking to them, and this girl, she walks up, she goes through the crowd, and she has a piece of paper in her hands, and she's got tears in her eyes, and she looks at me and she goes, "Take it, take it. I don't need it. Take it." And I grabbed it and I said, "Nice to meet you." And she just turned around and she walked away. I finished talking to the kids and hanging out with them, and I went to get in my car to drive to the airport. And I remember I had that little note and I took it out and I started reading it. And I just got so emotional because it was her suicide letter that she had written that morning. And, it's take it. I don't need it anymore. I don't need it anymore. And it was that moment where I realized, man, it is sacred ground on a platform like that. Whether you're speaking to sales professionals, HR, I mean, everything I really talk about, and we can talk about this on this podcast, is the gospel of Jesus Christ. It truly is. And it's done in a secular manner, right? We're talking about business principles or business ideals, but they are rooted in the gospel of Jesus Christ. And the greatest compliment of all is when audience members come up and they go, just felt something in your talk. I feel like you're a Christian. I feel like you believe in God. And I feel like I just felt something. And it's like, yes, that is it. And these Christ-like principles of helping people to feel seen and understood and accepted and loved. And, even the mission of doing something in the realms of the idea that if I can help an organization create a better culture, a better place of advocacy and mentorship and support and significance to the point that they might go home better moms, right? They might go home better dads. And then that creates better families.
Yes.
And we're truly changed the world. And so I've learned that from other great speakers. To answer your question, is that yes, those little moments and the things that they've taught me and the things that they've shared with me, those little pivotal, it's a story, it's a moment, it's a key phrase, it's a feeling, it's an experience that truly can change people. And so I never take that for granted. And I'm very lucky to do
Yeah.
that for a living.
Absolutely. I remember a fellow speaker, Sydney Jakes, she was talking about, she speaks to engineers. And she said the things she's teaching are actually helping them in their marriages when they would go home and they come back and they would say, I was just applying what you were telling me in this, and I was actually using it when I was talking to my wife. And that's the things that make the difference. So I know people listening are going to be saying, how do I do that? How do I be that Latter-day Saint speaker? Because I do believe that we have a special responsibility and stewardship as Latter-day Saint speakers to be able to go on stage and make that difference and create the space for the Spirit to be there. So how do we do that? Talking in business, talking in education, talking in whatever. What is a specific way? Do you feel like it's stories that you tell, or do you feel like it's the concepts that you share? I know you talk about like finding your purpose in that sense of having purpose where you are in the job that you're doing and finding that connection and fulfilling that. But what can you do to be that witness of the Savior in any setting?
So, if we're looking at through the lens and the context of becoming a professional speaker and striving to share a message, whether it's at a fireside, whether it's at a massive event with 20,000 people in the audience, I still think that many of the principles are still the same in regards to how would somebody decide or what allows somebody to choose a speaker. And it comes down to four things. You get hired or you get chosen as a speaker for number one, you're a celebrity. You have some sort of clout or you fill seats or you're considered very well known in some regard. The second reason is expertise. You're an expert in something. You have written a book, you've done research, you've experienced or done certain things that have allowed you to become credible and competent in a certain topic or area. The third component is a level of entertainment. You're a really good storyteller. You're really funny on stage. You ride a unicycle, you sing, you swallow fire on stage, you juggle, you play the drums, right? Those forms of entertainment are a part of the equation. And then the fourth component is inspiration, some inspiring story. And I believe every human has an inspiring story. So they have something to give, some experience, something that they have gone through that can bless and help other people. Some experiences are maybe a little more intense than others, right? Like you're the guy that climbed Mount Everest with no legs. You're the guy that ran 50 Ironmans in 50 days in 50 states. There's so many variations of what that looks like, but credibility, expertise, the ability to entertain and inspire are the four things. And so, as someone's maybe considering this or thinking about this, I think the more you can involve God and align your will with His is really great. If you're being called to speak about something, something you felt prompted to speak about, I think that's an important factor. But also, you have to remember in the business of speaking, if you want to be a professional doing this, yes, align your will with God, but remember the market is also an equation in this, right? And the market is always right. So you might want to go and talk to women about overcoming hard, difficult times in childbirth, right? Like you had an experience like that and you want to go tell it. That's awesome. That's amazing. And I guarantee there are people that need that message. But a business, right? Or a corporation or an HR conference probably is not looking for that, is probably not going to bring that in to speak to their event. I call it the concept of trombone oil. Don't get stuck selling trombone oil as a speaker. And the reason I say that is because trombones, they require oil, right, in the slider. The world only consumes 12 quarts of trombone oil every year. Like that's only the market is only 12 quarts. And so you might make the greatest trombone oil in the world, but the world only consumes 12 quarts of that. And so the point I'm making is if you want to do this here and there and for a very niche group, awesome, do it. If you want to create a sustainable business where you get booked consistently, where you're trying to support a family and other financial needs that you may have, then you also need to listen to the market and what does the market hire and book speakers for?
Oh, perfectly said. And it seems to me it is this Venn diagram sweet spot of you take like what you've done, your life experience, the drums, the aviation, the curiosity, the observance, and where's the need. And then this realm of, oh, there's a gap for this undercover millennial. There's a gap where there's retention issues. And who can fill that? I can do that. And then the place where you love to contribute what brings you joy. And you get the sweet spot of, I can contribute and I can be successful and I can love it. I can actually enjoy this and sustain that. And I think that's a huge piece for people, like you said, who want to do it professionally. As you've done that and you've made it into a business, we all know that a speaker's life, if you're really being a professional speaker, generally speaking, you're on the road, you're traveling, you're doing, Meredith Powell was just talking 82 gigs a year. Ty Bennett has done the 100 gigs a year. You live this. That can be a lonely, difficult schedule to do, and yet do it with the family. And you and your wife, Kelly, beautiful, lovely woman inside and out, you two are so tight and so close. How have you been able to maintain that? How have you involved her?
I don't know if we do it successfully, but the day I quit my job in the medical field to become a professional speaker was the day I went on my first date with Kelly. And it was a great pickup line. She's like, "What do you do for a living?" I said, "Nothing." I'm
He's a
currently,
keeper.
yeah. She's like, "Wow, this guy's really going places." She has literally been with me since day one. And we ran the business together in our marriage as young newlyweds. And we learned really quickly. It was actually one of the best and hardest things in our marriage because you learn really quickly, first off, being married, how to work and collaborate with another human, but running a business as well with someone that you're married to really expedites a lot of the core principles in any good relationship and how to sustain that. So, all of that to be said now to fast forward to where we are today. I've been doing this now full time for, God, we're coming up on my seventh year doing this. And now We have, so let me start with this. I'm very visionary. I have specific goals. I have a vision board that I create every year. I have a bucket list. They are big things in my life. I take them very seriously. And throughout this process, we have created visions and we've created goals and we've created milestones. I think it's important to ask any entrepreneur or to ask yourself in any journey that you're seeking, what happens when you actually get what you want? Because as an entrepreneur in this space, right, we work 80 hours a week so we don't have to work 40. You can never stop. There's so much that can be done. It's entrepreneurship. There's always something that can happen and you could be working on or scaling. And for me, one of the things that has been the greatest key to success and significance in our family and in our marriage is when we have accomplished something that we've truly wanted to accomplish, we have the ability and the beauty to say enough is enough. We did it. There were certain financial thresholds, there were certain events and milestones that we wanted to hit, and we have hit those. And we take a little sense of pride in saying that we did it and where we're at is enough. And could we have more? Sure. But at what
At what
sacrifice?
cost?
Yeah, at what cost? Right. And I think sometimes we're trying so hard to scale the mountain, to walk up the mountain, to get to the peak. And then you get to the peak, you kind of look around for a minute, and then you go, okay, well, what's the next peak? And that can be daunting. That can be exhausting, especially for the littles and the family and your spouse that's walking that journey with you. And so for me, I made a commitment, a promise to my family that when we get up to this certain peak, we're going to just take in the view.
Yeah.
And where we are is enough. And we are at a point, so we've raised our fees to a certain level that I'm only on the road 40 days a week or 40 days a year. And he's like, wow, you're really cutting back, Clint. Only 40 days a year. I used to do 112, and that was before COVID. And now I do 40. And the income level far surpasses what I did when I did 112. But we've worked really hard to create that. And there was a time where that wasn't possible. And I was grinding, we were pushing. We had, one child at the time or no kids when we very first started. And then Lily came, and then Lyndon came, and we lost our baby Will, and then Tommy came. And so as chapters change and morph, and the goal is to not just have financial affluence, but part of my goal in this was to have time affluence and to be able to be home with them and to be a good dad and to create those moments where they actually remember me and know me and I'm not missing things that are pivotal. There were some times where I would leave for a week and I could see physical changes in my kids. There are little milestones and things that I missed. And I just said, no more, no more. We could do 100 dates. And we turned down so many events, but it's just that's not the promise. That's not the goal. That's not the mountain that we're climbing right now. So
So good. It's not about more. It's about now. It's about being present and the fulfillment and the meaning in what we're doing and what we're experiencing. And I love that you bring the point. There is a time and a place for the grind, and that is a growing experience. You're in that growing, and that's necessary. But the discipline to be able to go, we're not in that phase anymore. We don't have to be. So we choose to be present and to enjoy the fruits of it while we're able to. That is just gorgeous. Along these lines, this is so good for people listening, speakers and all other industries. But do you have, for people who are in the midst of that grind and they're not quite there and they can see that dangling carrot of what you're talking about and saying, okay, I know it's there. Do you have any other piece of advice for staying grounded? Because when I interviewed Jason Hewlett, he was talking about when you get to a certain point, there's a lot of stuff being thrown at you. There's a lot available. How do you stay grounded in that vision? How do you stay grounded in the gospel? Has there been a gospel tool or experiences that you've had that have just helped you stay grounded?
I'm currently serving as a bishop right now in my ward, and that has definitely kept me grounded. Having that calling, it's a full-time job. First off, I've covenanted and promised that God comes first, right? And that I give up my time, my talents, and everything that God has blessed me with to build up his kingdom. That is first and foremost in my life. And I take that very seriously. And so when God calls or when I'm asked to do something in the gospel of Jesus Christ, I'm there. I'm in. So with that mentality, with this specific calling, that has kept me grounded. That has been something that I can't be on the road. 112 dates a year and be a good father and a good husband and serve in the church in a capacity that's going to do anybody any good. It's going to do the Lord any good. And so for me, sometimes God grounds me, because I can go. I love to go. And I think even from my eyes to there's been different moments where God has said, nope, sorry, Clint, nope, I need you to deviate. Nope, sorry, Clint, I need you to, and
Adjust the flight plan.
yeah, adjust the flight plan 100%. And I've just learned now to just trust in that. And then also just the counsel of my spouse and listening to her, because it's not all about you. The moment that I chose to marry her was the moment I dedicated everything to her and striving to bless her life. And I learned this as a speaker as well, Connie. And I think this is an important thing. Every audience member that I speak to, every time I get up on stage, I always tell myself, everybody's asking the question to me. Let me know when your message, let me know while you're here today, let me know when it gets to the part about me. And sometimes we hear that and we think, well, geez, what an entitled audience. Or like, everyone, let me know when it gets to the part about me. And I would say it's not about entitlement. It's about good speaking. It's about good storytelling. It's about connection. It's about what Christ did for us, right? Why do we love Christ so much? Because he got to the part about us. And in a marriage, I've got to get to the part about her. And my kiddos, I've got to get to the part about them. And in doing so, I think that equals out in creating the foundations of a solid relationship that has this ability to thrive and to be a healthy, sustainable thing. And so being grounded, Kelly has kept me grounded. My kids have kept me grounded. My faith has kept me grounded in striving to not just think about me, right? To think about him, to think about my family, to think about my kids. And as I've done that, and I think through that lens, man, everything else takes care of itself.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
are so right. And I think this is a great sort of caveat, especially with speaking, that we can start focusing on the siren call of the audience, of their response to us, and that hit, that feeling of being on stage and knowing that you're making a difference, and the accolades that come and the response after. But then you go back to an empty hotel room, right? And what
Mhm.
matters is that you have a family to go back to, that you have people who love you and see you and don't even probably notice or care that you're a speaker. Your kids probably don't even care. They just want to know, are you going to wrestle with me? Are you going to play with me? And
Totally.
again, like you say, that grounding of knowing that's my purpose. And this is my purpose too. But this is the greater purpose, to not ever forget that and lose that in sight of the momentary thing that's coming at you. So many great gems. Clint, I know we could talk for another half an hour because I know there's so many experiences that we have not even unearthed, but people can still find them with you. If our audience is, where can I find them? How can I connect with them ASAP, which I know they will be? What's the best way for them to reach you?
At my website, clintpulver.com, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, all the places. Yeah.
Fantastic. A totally wonderful interview today. So many goodies, so many things to take notes on and to learn from, and just wishing you all the best. What an amazing way. In my opinion, I've loved seeing how you've taken this combination of that, like we said, life experiences and opportunities and learning and curiosity, and then amalgamated it into this life that you love, that your wife loves, that your kids love, that you can all love and experience together, good, the bad, and the ugly, no matter what, right? It's not like it's Pollyanna, but that you've intentionally put your ladder on the right building and you've been able to feel the fruits of it. And now you're up in the vistas and being able to see all the good things that he's done and the next peak that is coming. It's just beautiful. Thank you so much for being with us today.
You're welcome, Connie.
And for those of you who have enjoyed this interview, remember we have so many other interviews. Like I said, Brandon Mull, we have Dr. Stacy Taniguchi, who has climbed Everest and the other mountains 7 times. So there you go. But all of these wonderful interviews of people who have followed their calling to create, giving you tips and tools on how you can fulfill your call to be creative.